Hello, welcome to a sound test. My name is Brian, and today I just want to kind of talk about how great it is to be an Xbox fan right now. So I'm recording this in summer of 2021. This is a little bit after E3, and my takeaway from E3 for Microsoft is nothing but excitement, but it is crazy amount of things that they did show at E3, but it's equally crazy amount of stuff they didn't show at E3. And we're going to go ahead and look at a little bit of what Microsoft has to offer in these next coming years, and just like the immense of power that they actually have with all of these studios and what we can see coming up. And what you see on screen, this is like the Xbox Game Studios webpage. And even then, this is just a sampling of all of the studios they have. They have more studios than what you see on screen, which is absolutely insane. So let's just look at a few of them and see kind of what is coming up for Microsoft and Xbox platform in these upcoming years. So the first studio we have, of course, is 343 Studios, who's been basically the default Halo studio for the last, 10 years at this point. So with 343, we have Halo Infinite that's coming up. And I think we all remember how polarizing Halo Infinite reveal was from last year. And so, to be fair, they're doing a bold new direction for Halo, and they're doing kind of this open world-esque sandbox, which we don't really see with the Halo franchise. However, of course, the big thing from last year was a lot of people didn't feel like the graphics were, showcasing the true power of next-gen hardware. And on top of that, just some of those character models were just downright terrible. But Microsoft did the great decision to delay this an entire year. So Halo Infinite was supposed to come out in November 2020, and it's been basically delayed till holiday 2021. And that delay, from what we've seen at E3, was a great move. They showed off the multiplayer, and it looks phenomenal. Like the amount of new things that you can do. So Halo multiplayer has always been super simple. You have your standard modes, TDM, capture flag, and they had some variety, with like SWAT or things like that. But Halo's multiplayer has been genuinely pretty simple. But the things that they're adding to this, the grappling hook and the increased mobility and the ability to grab weapons in the air, and just that little highlight reel, just all the crazy stuff that you can do with multiplayer, just makes the multiplayer aspect look so like enticing. But the biggest thing about that is that it's going to be free to play, which has never been done. And the fact that it's going to be free to play means there's going to constantly be a population for this game, which means playlists are going to be full, and that you can actually like jump in and kind of go through all of the events that's going on and not worry about not a lot of people playing. So that's going to be huge, especially since it's going to be a combination of the PC market and the actual console market. Then they also show parts of the campaign, and the campaign looks great. And from what we can tell so far is that Halo Infinite is going to pretty much be, I don't want to say the last Halo, but it's probably it's going to be the last Halo for a very long time. And I say that because the way they are approaching this seems like it's going to kind of be an ongoing game. And so that over the years, they're going to continue to support this game and give us more updates, which I'm completely all for. And if you kind of think about it, that's what they did with Halo Master Chief Collection. And with Master Chief Collection, it started off really rough. But if you play it now in 2021, it is a fantastic package. Constant updates on the multiplayer front, constant upgrades and additions, and Halo Master Chief Collection became a really solid game. And it's a game that's just super fun to jump into every once in a while. So if they can put that commitment of constant updates and things for Halo Infinite we may be playing Halo Infinite for 5-6 years down the line. Now, also, yeah, 343 has had a rough track record with the Halo franchise, but I think Infinite, they have to get it right. They have to prove to Halo fans that, they're capable of delivering an amazing game, but on top of that, that they're committed to giving fans what they want for the Halo franchise. All right, so next we have the Coalition. So the Coalition was the studio that was kind of built after Epic Games ended their partnership with Microsoft over the Gears of War franchise. So I'm a huge Gears of War fan. Matter of fact, Gears of War 2 was the first Xbox 360 game that I played. And I just remember just being absolutely blown away by that game, just the scope of it and just the graphical details. So Gears of War has been a franchise I've been very, very, close to over these years. And so the Coalition picked up right with Gears of War Remastered, first one remastered, or Ultimate Edition, excuse me, and then Gears 4. And I think what a lot of people found was Gears of War 4 was kind of okay. But Gears of War 5 they knocked it out the park, man. Gears of War 5 is such a complete package. It is a visual feat. If you play that game on Series X, it is downright gorgeous. It is ridiculous how much fidelity that the Coalition can bring from the hardware. But on top of that, the multiplayer suite has been constantly been refined, and now I think it's at a good point. It is still a little microtransaction heavy with all of the, coins and different currencies and things like that. But the gameplay honestly is probably up there with Gears 3. And even then, the balancing of the weapons are actually better, I believe, in Gears 5 than it is in Gears of War 3. But on top of that, the things they've added post-launch, like Hive Busters and new characters and new maps and even additions to the campaign, makes Gears of War 5 kind of like the biggest Gears of War game that you could possibly have. So it's no doubt that Coalition is currently working on Gears of War 6 to kind of complete that trilogy. But what they also said is that they're working on a brand new IP, which is super, super interesting. So that means this will kind of be, as we can kind of see what Microsoft is doing, they're taking their franchises that's, the Gears franchise and the Forza Horizon franchise, and they're actually building these teams up to handle multiple projects. So we see how insanely talented they are with bringing out the fidelity and the scope on Gears 4 and 5. Just imagining what they can do with a new IP, new idea, heck, probably new gameplay ideas is super exciting from the Coalition. And on top of that, they've already announced that they're going to be transitioning into Unreal Engine 5. So Gears 4 and Gears 5 was on Unreal Engine 4, and they was able to get that fidelity out. Just imagine the crazy things and visuals they can do with Unreal Engine 5 is going to be super exciting. But that also means it's going to be a very long time before we see anything from the Coalition. Possibly 2023-4 is probably going to be next time we actually see something from them. All right, so next we have Compulsion Games. So this studio's only did 2 games, and they were kind of middling games. You had Contrast, which seemed to do very well, and then We Happy Few, which was a bit of a disappointment. I haven't played either of these games, but I will say this about Compulsion Games and a few other studios that Microsoft now owns on the Xbox is the potential. And so with Game Pass, that allows us to have kind of a resurgence of the AA game. So every game that Microsoft published doesn't have to be the Halo Infinites or the Gears of War 5s, where they have these big, massive, AAA experiences. Some of them needs to be more smaller experiences, like the Medium that we had earlier this year. And I think Compulsion Games is going to be perfect for fitting into that niche. Obviously like a lower scale game, but with Microsoft backing, we're going to get higher quality games, just not as a big scope. And that also allows these studios to get these games out a little bit faster. So We Happy Few came out in 2016. And I think this last expansion they did for it was 2018 or something like that. Since then, since they've been acquired by Microsoft, we have no idea what they're working on. And since that was 2018 when they were acquired, and it's 2021, we could possibly see a new game from Compulsion either next year in 2022 or maybe even something in 2023. And the fact that it's kind of been this long and they've been very silent makes me really wonder if this is going to be a completely new IP for Microsoft, or are they going to kind of go back into Microsoft's treasure trove of IPs and kind of pull something from there and, make a new experience from there. So next we have Double Fine Productions. So Double Fine kind of is one of those studios that always made really stellar games on obviously kind of like smaller budget, because they were mostly going off of published games and contracted games, and in some cases some crowdfunded games. But what makes Double Fine again really exciting is going to be the backing from Microsoft. So they've proven they can do excellent games like Psychonauts and things like Brutal Legend, and they kind of fill this weird alternate niche when it comes to game development. They're not going to be like I said with Compulsion, they're not going to push these super AAA games, but they're still going to give us these nice quality games. And so the newest game that's coming out pretty soon is going to be Psychonauts 2, and that's coming on all platforms. But given their history with Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2 as a platformer, I wouldn't be too surprised if Double Fine did like a Banjo or a Conquer and be able to give that justice. And we know that the studio does a great job with humor, so even Conquer may be a really great fit for the studio. But if I'm not mistaken, Tim Schafer already revealed that they're going to be working on a brand new IP for Double Fine Productions. And again, I think that's what Microsoft needs as well, is these new ideas, fresh franchises, and things that can really define what Xbox games are going to be. And again, they're going to fill that perfect AA niche where they can produce way more games way quicker and fill in between these gigantic, blockbuster releases. Then we have the Initiative, which we don't know much about other than that it's the quadruple A studio. But we already know that the Initiative is working on Perfect Dark. And this is, again, one of those great things that we have with potential of Xbox Game Studios. Taking these old IP that historically people loved and people will want to see back and bringing them into the new age. They did this with Killer Instinct. Obviously, it wasn't with an internal studio, but the Killer Instinct reboot was done very, very well. All things considered, it could have had a bigger budget, but from a technical standpoint, it is a fantastic fighting game. And so with them completely building a brand new studio with the Initiative and bringing back Perfect Dark, Microsoft is showing that they have no problem going back into their old IP and reviving this. Now, this also was just well rumored for a while that Initiative was going to work on Perfect Dark, but I'm really excited to see where they're going to take the franchise. How many stealth elements are they going to add? Because the original game came back in the late 90s, and so much changed in terms of what you can do with video games and stealth and mechanics that they could kind of just go wild with the potential of a new Perfect Dark game. So then we have In Exile, which their last release was Wasteland 3, which was from last year in 2020. So what makes In Exile really interesting, one, they're an RPG studio, but they're not a traditional like first person RPG studio, or obviously they're not like a JRPG studio. They tend to have more strategy RPGs, and with Wasteland 3, I haven't played it before. I heard it was a fantastic showing, but they've also worked on things like The Bard's Tale, and the last thing we've heard from them is that they're actually been expanded to 2 studios. Again, that great push from Microsoft, and that because they've been expanded to 2 studios, now they can kind of work on new different projects. And again, we can get the pace of these games out much, much quicker. And so from Exile, especially since they're just kind of been, a company kind of in the background, now with the Microsoft backing and with Game Pass, they're going to get the games to a much wider audience, but also they can try new and more experimental things and have the financial backing. I mean, it's Minecraft. What else do I have to say? So now we have Ninja Theory. And of course, Ninja Theory is working on Hellblade 2, which is kind of a very highly anticipated game. But it also was kind of revealed that they're very early in development for this. So honestly, I would expect us to see Hellblade 2 until possibly 2023. But with that being said, though, they're actually working on several other games at the same time. So we know about Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. That's like the most known one. But there's also Project Mara and the Insight Project. And none of these we don't know much about. Their last release was Bleeding Edge, which came out early in 2020, which came to rather mixed reviews, let's just say that. It didn't catch the world on fire, especially with it being a multiplayer focused game. However, the fact that they have 3 separate projects going on all at the same time, and the fact that Ninja Theory kind of has been known for their take on action games is, that is a niche that Xbox really hasn't had, was these action games. Kind of Xbox always been racing first-person shooters for a very long time, but we haven't had, or third-person shooters, but we haven't really had a big action-based franchise from Microsoft. And with Ninja Theory, I'm pretty sure it's going to be, completely new takes and new IPs, which is, again, still a great thing. But it's going to be a bit of a while before we see something from Ninja Theory. So then we have Obsidian, which was acquired in 2018, I believe. And these were they have a very storied past with video games. More importantly, I think everybody remembers them mostly from Fallout New Vegas, and kind of their commitment to RPG and humor based games. I've been recently playing The Outer Worlds, and it is a fantastic game, and we got confirmation of Outer Worlds 2 is currently in development this past E3. But just to put this in perspective, The Outer Worlds came in 2019. Then Grounded came in early access in 2020. And that was done by a team of like a very small team. And then they've also announced Avowed, which is another game that Obsidian is doing. So they're currently juggling 3 different projects right now, which could possibly mean we may see Avowed as either more information on Avowed as early as next year. And then we could possibly see The Outer Worlds sometime in 2022 as well. Either 2022 or 2023. But regardless, the output of Obsidian is pretty ridiculous right now. And they're going to be another major pillar for Microsoft, especially when it comes to these RPG games. But with us seeing Grounded, that tells us, hey, they can make these also kind of weird or new takes on different things. And, Grounded is completely not an RPG. Definitely something out of their typical wheelhouse. But they're able to do things with a lot of authenticity, and as I said, that humor aspect to it. So I'm excited to see what Obsidian is really going to bring for us. Then we have Playground Games, which has been doing the fantastic Forza Horizon series. I've played every one, some to varying degrees. I put a lot of time in Forza Horizon 1, Forza Horizon 2, currently going through Forza Horizon 4, played a little bit of Forza Horizon 3. But Playground Games has kind of shown that they're also wizards at, the graphical fidelity. Forza Horizon 5 was just recently revealed, and it looks absolutely amazing. It's taking place in Mexico, and the tech behind them, where they're taking 8K footage and like seamlessly putting that into, you know, the gameplay, and the amount of detail in the weather effects, the cars, like droplets of rain, the forest. You know, they really know how to get the power out of, you know, these internal Xbox consoles. And the fact that they actually expanded to a second team, and then that second team is doing Fable, is even more crazy. And this is the thing, that another aspect that gets so exciting for Xbox fans, that they announced Fable last year in 2020, and we still don't know anything about it. And they announced that in 2020. 2021 came by, we got a whole bunch of new announcements from Microsoft, and then there's still a bunch of things that we still don't know about. And that means that Microsoft is building up kind of like this pipeline in which they're constantly announcing new projects, and then constantly giving us new feedback and new trailers and information about previous things that they've announced. So it wouldn't surprise me if out of nowhere they just gave a release date for Fable, and we see more of what Playground Games is going to do. And on top of that, Fable is using the tech that's in the Forza Horizon series, and so that means these worlds are going to be gorgeous. These worlds are going to be very detailed. They're going to be nice and big, especially since we've seen that Forza Horizon games take up this ginormous space. So them being able to tackle again another classic Microsoft franchise with Fable, we're excited to see like what they can do with that premise. So then we have Rare, and Rare has been a bit of a contention over the last few years. That is mostly because of how Microsoft kind of used the studio. I think we all know the dark ages of Rare, when they were kind of just relegated to Kinect games. But a lot of that has changed, and I think Microsoft is doing a good job of trying to rework the narrative around Rare. So Rare has all these classic and you know, well-loved IPs from over the years. But here's the thing. The Rare studio, obviously from the 90s, is not the same Rare studio today. And it seems that Rare nowadays is more focused on giving us new IP and new ideas. So we've seen that with Sea of Thieves, which has been a big hit for them, and that they're still continuously giving updates for 4 years into the actual series being released. They're still giving constant updates to. And then they also announced Everwild last year, which is a completely new thing, and it seems like it's going to be kind of an action RPG. We actually just don't know. And from the trailer that they've seen, is the art style looks great, and we see that they're using magic, and it has something to do with these animals. The art style is just really gorgeous, and so that's what I think is going to be the biggest thing for Rare, is to create these new and unique gameplay experiences. So yes, everybody wants to see Banjo, everybody wants to see all these old franchises, but if you really think about it, Microsoft is still utilizing those old franchises. So we've seen that they took Killer Instinct and they rebooted it. Now obviously they're trying to the newest news is that they're trying to find a new studio to push forward with the Killer Instinct franchise, but they brought Killer Instinct back. Then we saw with Rare Replay that they want all those classic franchises to kind of be in people's memories. Now we see that they're redoing Perfect Dark as a new series. They're rebooting Perfect Dark. Then we just got Battletoads last year as well. So Microsoft still realizes the potential of Rare's IPs. So I think the best thing that Microsoft can do is continue to work on these third-party relations and get other studios to work on these old Rare IPs, while modern Rare can get to do new and unique things, while we still can get maybe a Conquer, maybe Banjo, maybe more Battletoads, Killer Instinct, and still use these classic Rare IPs and give them to new developers, new opportunities, so that Rare as a studio now, the modern Rare, can make new modern classics. So there's not much I can say about Turn 10 other than they just kind of always do a very fantastic job. So there's two pillars to the Forza franchise. There's Forza Motorsport, which is Turn 10 is over, and then Forza Horizon, which we saw earlier with Playground Games. And Forza Motorsport is kind of the serious version of the Forza franchise. It is the simulation game, the one that's pretty much competing with something of the likes of Gran Turismo on the Sony side. So when it comes to Forza Motorsport, it has always been a game that's very grounded reality, but it's also the game that's always kind of pushing the tech in terms of the realism. Now, what makes Turn 10 interesting is that they haven't had a game since, I believe it was 2017. And almost everybody was expecting, Forza, whatever, 8 or 7, I believe it would have been 8, was going to be released this year in 2021. But the fact that they surprised us and showed that Forza Horizon 5 is being released in 2021 means that this team is going to have another year to cook up basically what's going to happen with the evolution, I should say, of the Forza Motorsport series. And they've said that before that it's pretty much going to be maybe not even a reboot, but just a reimagining of what they want to do. And so others has thought, it's been rumored that this new Forza Motorsport is going to be kind of like the definitive one, where they release it and every year they're going to kind of build up upon it, either with new tracks, new cars, or whatever the case may be. And they kind of may turn it into, I don't want to say a live service game, but a constantly ongoing game rather than the constant 2-year cycle that we've been seeing before. But yeah, it is very exciting to see what they can do to really push forward the Series X's tech with the newest Forza Motorsport games. So we also have Undead Labs, which has been working on the State of Decay series, and I played a little bit of State of Decay 1. It's a little jank, but it was, again, small studio and on basically Xbox 360 hardware. I haven't played State of Decay 2, but from what I heard, it was much better. But it seemed like the thing that was kind of holding them back was budget. So they announced State of Decay 3 last year, in 2020, and it seems the tech of it might be a way better than what we've seen before in State of Decay 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 kind of, the graphical fidelity wasn't there, let's just be honest. But from that teaser trailer that we've seen in 3, I have no reason not to believe that State of Decay 3 can have that level of fidelity. And that's partly because before State of Decay 1 and 2, they were published by Microsoft, but Undead Labs wasn't owned by Microsoft. They wasn't part of, their portfolio, their studios. But now that they officially are, and we know that they're working on State of Decay 3, that's probably going to give them way more budget, way more time, and more importantly, going to give them that support that they need to really release a fantastic follow-up. Now, I would hope to see that Undead Labs obviously doesn't just get stuck on State of Decay, but that they do branch out and, potentially have a second team to create some more new IP or some new ideas for, what they can bring to the Microsoft family or the Microsoft, IP-scape. So this is a kind of weird one. This is Alpha Dog, and they kind of do mobile games. This was one of the groups that was included with the Bethesda acquisition, and they literally specialized in mobile games for Bethesda, which doesn't have a lot. I believe they have 3 games so far, and the newest game was a Doom mobile game. So I'm curious to what is going to happen to the studio. Is Microsoft slash Bethesda, are they going to want them to continue to make mobile games? Or are they going to kind of be like expanded and start making content, more suited for Xbox and PC? We have no idea what's going to go on with that. It would be interesting if they could take a classic Microsoft series or even a classic Bethesda series and kind of see what they can do with that. Just throwing it out there, it might be interesting to see what they can do with Commander Keen. Obviously not as a mobile game, because I think Bethesda learned their lesson with that, but maybe as just a small scale platformer, or kind of something in the same vein as Battletoads in terms of that level of scope. Maybe something like what we call a game instead of a AAA or a AA. So yeah, I really wonder how Microsoft is going to approach Alpha Dog and what their plans are for this studio in the future. And so then we have Arcane Studios, which I think is probably one of the most, exciting studios to see the development of. So they did the Dishonored series, Dishonored 1, Dishonored 2, the reboot of Prey, and the game that I'm most hyped about this year is Deathloop. Now, ironically, it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, as that was done before this deal, but they are already showed another game called Redfall, which is going to be exclusive to Xbox, and that's coming out next year in 2022, summer of 2022. So this is another studio, kind of like Obsidian, that just has a ridiculous output. The fact that Deathloop is coming out this year, which is looking to be a nice, well-polished AAA experience, and then next year possibly another well-polished AAA experience. And so far, Arcane has had a great track record, makes his output of the studio going to be ridiculous. And even Deathloop had, been pushed back some. But even with that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another game from Arcane in like 2024, as it is proven they're working on 2 different teams right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's another game in pre-production already, possibly a sequel to Dishonored 3 or Prey. So then we have Bethesda Game Studios. So this is the studio that is responsible for the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and the modern Fallouts. And the biggest thing that they have going on for them, of course, is Starfield, which is coming out in 2022. And that is their, if I'm not mistaken, their first original IP in 20 years. And that's going to be super exciting to see, what they can do. So, it's always been, Bethesda's always been associated with very stellar Western RPGs, with what they've done with when they got out of the reins of the Fallout franchise with Fallout 3, and with the Elder Scrolls series with Skyrim or Oblivion. But kind of the old joke in the industry was that Bethesda games always had jank. They wasn't quite polished, and they always had something off at launch and they had to be fixed later. But again, with the backing of Microsoft, the fact that Microsoft pushed their biggest IP, Halo, back an entire year makes me, feel like they're going to do the same for Bethesda. Not necessarily that Bethesda needs super great quality checks, but I think that with Microsoft backing, they're just more so, hey, when it's ready, it's ready. And apparently they're very confident about Starfield, that they gave it a release date a year and a half before it comes out. And that's pretty substantial, given an exact release date that far in advance. So, with Bethesda Game Studios, we see that Starfield is coming out. Obviously, they've already announced that they're going to be working on the new Elder Scrolls games, which the last one was Skyrim, which is 10 years old now. Now, obviously, these are going to be huge games, so we may not see the next Elder Scrolls until possibly something around 2025 or something as ridiculous as that. But I will say this: they also have the Fallout franchise. With the Fallout franchise, they can kind of make another Fallout game in between that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Bethesda Game Studios. It could be another studio that works on a brand new Fallout, whether it be a side game or what, or as they're continuing to work on Fallout 76 as well, we can see potentially a new Fallout, either a Fallout 5, well, they'll probably say Fallout 5 for Bethesda, but maybe another side Fallout game like they did with New Vegas. So that's going to be interesting for that point of view. But and another thing with Starfield is they're keeping their cards close. They gave us a release date, but we still don't know much of the game. And so I feel like 2022 is just going to be a complete media blowout, and they're going to push that game hard next year because they're just going to have all eyes on them. That's going to be their big holiday game of next year. It's going to be Starfield. So to see what they're going to be able to do with that is going to be, and with the polish and backing of Microsoft, let's see really what they can do with Starfield. So then we have id Software. So id is responsible for the kind of being the forerunners of the first-person shooter genre. So we have Doom and Wolfenstein and Quake. All of these were id properties and id creations. And so, they have a very storied history in terms of first-person shooters and like really defining first-person gameplay. And so we've seen them reboot Doom, which was fantastic. I've probably played through that game 2 or 3 times. Then we had Doom Eternal last year. So what is going to be next for id is going to be very interesting. So we know they're probably going to be kind of done with the Doom franchise for a bit. And Wolfenstein has been handled by Machine Games. So the next logical thing for id would be Quake. And they have a multiplayer Quake already. I forgot what the title is, but it's kind of a just jump in and play type of thing. But Quake has been for a while associated with multiplayer gameplay, but not single player gameplay. And if I were a betting person, I think the next thing that id would do, and possibly what Microsoft want them to do to really, utilize the IP, is possibly put forward a reboot or reimagining of the Quake franchise. And I think the thing that makes Doom different is Doom is like very high pace, very fast, a lot of things moving on at once. But while Quake can be that, I think Quake works itself better from a horror standpoint. Something not necessarily slow but haunting. Kind of what they were trying to do with Doom 3. So I would really be interested if they rebooted Quake and just to kind of diversify what they do, make it this really gripping, dark, uncomfortable setting, and what they can do with that. But given that Doom Eternal was just released in 2020 and expansions were released in 2021, it's probably going to be a while before we see something from id. So next we have Machine Games. So Machine Games is responsible for the very excellent Wolfenstein, The New Order, in which that was their kind of reboot of the Wolfenstein franchise, as well as the sequels and spin-offs regarding the Wolfenstein franchise. So it also was revealed that they're working on a completely brand new IP, which was Indiana Jones. And there's a lot of speculations on that, what that game is going to be like. Is it going to be a first person? It's going to be a third person game. Is it going to be essentially, Microsoft's Uncharted or Microsoft's Tomb Raider? Will it be exclusive to Xbox and PC, or will it be a third party game? There's a lot of questions we don't know. But also, it's been quite a while since we've seen a game from Machine Games. The last thing we saw was the expansion pack or the DLC for Wolfenstein 2. So I believe it's the New Blood. So what they're doing now has been kind of long rumored that they're possibly working on Wolfenstein 3, which would just make sense to end the trilogy. But yeah, it's kind of up there with what Machine Games are going to do next. And the fact that they didn't show us much with the Indiana Jones games makes me feel that that game is going to be a little bit further out. So they can, if they're working on 2 games concurrently, we'll probably see Wolfenstein 3 very soon, and then Indiana Jones maybe possibly something like 2023 or 2024. So this is an odd one. Roundhouse Studios. We know almost nothing about them. They just started in 2019, and this was another Bethesda studio. And this was made by Human Head Studios, which was the original creators of Prey. So what makes this one just kind of up in the air, we have no idea what they was working with Bethesda before the acquisition. And we have no idea what they're going to do after the acquisition, now that they're owned under Microsoft. So this one is a definite wild card. And given that the studio was just formed in 2019, and games usually take a very long process, especially with new studios that just start up, we probably won't see anything from this studio for a very long time. So it's hard to really say what is going on with this studio. So here is Tango Gameworks, which is going to be super interesting because this is a Japanese studio, and this is also with the Bethesda acquisition. And Microsoft has constantly been trying to kind of break their way into the Japanese market, and they've just kind of been unsuccessful at every attempt. But with Tango Gameworks, they haven't made a lot of games. They did The Evil Within 1 and 2, as well as their newest project, which is Ghostwire Tokyo, which that looks pretty fantastic. But ironically, again, like with Arcane, that is actually a PlayStation 5 exclusive. So obviously that game's come out this year, so we won't probably see anything new from Tango Gameworks for a while. But I wonder how Microsoft is going to push forward with this studio. So yes, it is a Japanese studio. However, it's clearly not a heavy like JRPG studio, or it doesn't fall into the traditional Japanese market. It is, their specialty is horror games, and with Ghostwire Tokyo, that just seems to be like a completely new thing. It's still a Japanese focused game, but it makes me wonder what Microsoft is going to do with it. Do they want to push forward with an Evil Within, third game to make a trilogy? Do they want to go forward with Ghostwire 2? Or do they just want them to do their completely, unique thing? I don't see any of Microsoft's old IP fitting in with what Tango Gameworks has going on. So I feel like this is a complete wild card too, as what they can do or what they're going to do with Tango Gameworks. And finally, we have Zenimax Online. So Zenimax Online is working on the Elder Scrolls Online, and they started on Commander Keen, and that didn't go very, very well when it was announced it was going to be a mobile game, and that was quietly canceled. But it was revealed recently that ZeniMax Online is working on a new IP. So we don't know what that's going to look like, or if it's going to be another MMORPG like the Elder Scrolls Online. But yeah, that's what's going on with ZeniMax. Probably going to be a while before we see something kind of new and amazing with that either. So yeah, that's all of Microsoft Studios. And I didn't even include World's Edge, which was a studio they just started building in the last year or so to work on the Age of Empires franchise. So the really interesting thing about with all these studios is that Microsoft has 22, 23 studios, and some of these studios have multiple teams on them. So that means they could possibly be constantly working on, anywhere to 30 to 40 plus, projects all at the same time, which if you just think about the massive amounts of output that is. You know, the Xbox One has always been, you know, meme to death for it not having games, you know, not having enough games or not having compelling software. Well, they're going to prove that they're going to have compelling software now. Now, to be fair, some of these studios are going to be just working on one franchise or one series, or, you know, working on constant updates on a particular game. But the value that all of these studios are bringing to the Xbox brand cannot be overstated. And the fact that Microsoft doesn't seem to slow down. They said that they're going to make more acquisitions, but more importantly, that they're going to be working on other IP and you know, new IP and taking back some of their old IP. So like that, from a Microsoft fan, is super exciting to see that they're bringing back Perfect Dark, Fable, seeing that they brought back Killer Instinct, and that, you know, they're still invested in Killer Instinct. They want to find a new studio to work for that. You know, that shows us that they're very committed to going full force into making Xbox a powerhouse brand, and cannot be overstated how powerful Game Pass is. So this is great for these AA games, for these smaller games, because that means that Microsoft can work with smaller developers, use their, you know, smaller development studios to fill in gaps, to have a constant flow of games, to make sure that anybody who has an Xbox or has a PC is going to be very satisfied for the things that Xbox has in store for them. So this is coming from you know, an Xbox fan since the original Xbox, and I'm so excited to see what they have coming up. I feel like they finally have a powerhouse of IPs and just potential that's just brewing up, and it's exciting to be a Microsoft fan. It's exciting to see what they can do and what they can deliver in the future. So hope you enjoyed this video, this look at all of Microsoft's IPs and studios. And my name is Brian. This has been Soundtest, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.